that Todd has got his time. But again, thank you for that. And you'll notice a lot of common themes running through Leanne, Jennifer, Martin, and then Claire. What Todd's going to cover off, and really it's come up a lot this year, we've had a little bit of discussion about it here already, is the future of auditing, because we've had a lot of concerns and issues this year with remote audits and the travel restrictions for auditors. And there's a number of issues coming up on how we maintain the same integrity of the food safety audits, both from the point of view of schemes and from the point of view of certification bodies. So I've asked Todd to discuss that. Todd Redwood, as most of you know, is with BSI. He's Global Food and Retail Supply Chain Operations and Compliance Director. You need a big business card for that, Todd. He's been helping food-related businesses deliver safe, sustainable, socially responsible food to tables around the world for 30 years. Started off as a chef in international hotels, worked there and then moved to certification. He's a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, and he's also the chair of the Independent International Organization for Certification. So he's got a global perspective on food safety auditing and certification in general. So without further ado, Todd, hand it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Bill. Just checking that you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen, okay. Yes.
And hear me clearly, okay. Great, well, yeah, thank you and welcome everyone. And thanks for the opportunity to SQF to be able to address you today as the final speaker of the session. As Bill said, the future of food safety auditing is one of these critical elements, and the pandemic in the last approximately 2 years of challenges that we've faced certainly makes us carefully about what this future looks like. Of course, some of these things were in play that we're going to talk about today already prior to the pandemic, but I think the pandemic has highlighted the need for us to think differently. So yeah, as Bill said, that's me, and you can hopefully see me as well at the moment on camera, although I can't see you or myself at the moment. So the agenda for what I wanted to go through today, just a little bit about who BSI is. I want to bring up something called PAS 320 on the back of Claire's presentation there. We'll talk about the increasing complexity in the standards, the next generation of assurance, some immersive solutions. This is a term that BSI uses, immersive rather than remote or otherwise. And just discuss about some ways of combating audit fatigue and then opening up for questions at the end. So I've got quite a few slides, but some of them will be quite quick to get through. BSI, just briefly, BSI is a Royal Charter not-for-distributed profit organisation based, headquartered in London, operating in 32 countries around the world. A lot of clients, and we were the world's first national standards body. So we're still the national standards body for the UK. But we're also responsible for establishing ISO in 1947, part of the foundation of ISO, still chair ISO, and also we're involved in things, setting things up like Standards Australia and Standards New Zealand in the early days, also back in the early part of last century. So our purpose is to make the world a better place through use of standardisation, and hopefully that's one of the things that we do in the food sector, which is one of our areas of interest. Now, a newsflash, only last night, and so I added this slide in just at the last minute. So to complement what Claire was talking about with food safety culture, BSI initiated a project which is a PAS, a publicly available specification. So it's not technically a standard, but it's written to the specifications that a standard or an international standard would be. So PAS 320, a practical guide to developing a mature culture of food safety, is now open for public consultation. The public consultation period closes at midnight UK time on the 10th of December. If there's anyone on this call who is interested in participating in that public consultation, i.e. being involved in reviewing that standard, or that PAS, please let me know. You can email me on the email available on the screen here. There's also got to come up at the end of my presentation with my email address, and I can put you in contact with the relevant parties to be able to participate in that process. This will effectively become the first standard on food safety culture. There are many models, and of course there's some I guess some kind of specs out there, but it was thought that this was needed. So with a collective from around the world of industry and experts, including Lone Jesperson, we have developed this PAS 320. So that's just on the back of what you've heard there from Claire. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about in the agenda was auditors and the challenges that we have with the auditors. So in relation to the future of food safety auditing. Our current cohort of food safety auditors are effectively accidental auditors. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but no one went to university and said, look, I'm going to university to become an auditor. They've gone in there to become a food technologist or a food scientist or a food engineer or something like that generally. And then at some stage in their career, they've said, maybe I'll give this a go as auditing. We need to set up people from the beginning, because of course the complexity of what it means to be an auditor now and the qualifications required to do that mean that it would be much better if people set themselves up from the start to be able to become a food safety auditor. We also have this fact that we're going to need more auditors, and very soon. A lot of the auditors that we've had from the past are at an age where they may be retiring, getting past the point of being able to keep up, maybe some of them, with where the industry is going with auditing. We're also seeing an increase in the number of audits required to be delivered. So we're shorter on resources, and the resources are getting to a point where they're potentially leaving our auditing industry. It's also to be acknowledged that it's a very expensive and slow process to bring new auditors on, and this is not necessarily attractive for the auditors or the certification bodies, who tend to be the ones who are responsible for bringing them up through the ranks. So these are some significant challenges and ones that we need to work through. Other ones, I've already mentioned the qualification criteria, but it is becoming harder. So auditors that were becoming qualified 20 years ago, it was actually relatively easy for them to become qualified. Now it's actually quite a complex scenario to become qualified. And because of the specialist industry coding that we require, and this is all relevant to make sure auditors are very specialised in the areas or the subsectors of the industry that they're auditing, then it means that auditors are less likely to be experts in all sorts of fields. So gone are the days where a new auditor would come in and be able to be coded to be able to audit our entire food industry. It's very specific, and they may be just for dairy, or maybe just for red meat, or just a combination of a few elements, rather than being specialists in everything. It's a complex and certainly a changing world. The standards, which I'm going to address soon, are forever changing, and that's through lots of different drivers. We also need to recognise that the industry itself is changing and the needs are changing. And if we go right back to the beginning of this session, where Leanne was talking about the need for driving down recalls and withdrawals, if we keep doing things exactly the way that we've been doing them forever, we're probably not going to see an enormous change in outcomes. So there's a need for looking at different ways of doing things. And so we're looking at an auditor who's potentially going to become a data analyst, rather than someone who's just the boots on the ground auditor that we have today, that has to go and trawl through oodles of records, and CCP records, etc. What we're talking about here is maybe combining some artificial intelligence, some machine learning, some predictive analytics that an auditor can assess, rather than actually doing all of that legwork. And maybe this is a constant thing. Maybe this is actually going on every day of the year, and then the auditor comes in and, with the help of some artificial intelligence, actually just goes and looks at the areas of concern or interest, rather than having to look at everything and then try to maybe find the areas of concern, maybe not. Now, we recognise that there's been no systematic development pipeline for auditors. So if we continue the way that we've been going, we're going to end up with another cohort of accidental auditors rather than ones that are purposefully going into auditing as a career. Part of that shared industry challenge that we have is looking for a way to incubate new auditors. And there's a few people on this call here who have been involved in a project that I guess I dreamt up a few years ago. It's a bit of a pause at the moment for a number of reasons, but basically getting together universities, manufacturers, retailers, regulators, certification body schemes, basically getting together and finding out a way that we can incubate collaboratively for the benefit of the entire industry, new auditors in 8 to 10 years time, because it's going to take a while. It doesn't, you can't bring an old head on young shoulders. So we need to make sure that these people come through the process. And so working with universities and creating internships with certification bodies and industry as well, providing career guidance so that people make the right choices as they go through to be able to go into an auditing career down the track, and giving them all the skills and necessary wherewithal to be able to keep up with some of the IT changes and analytical analysis that will be required of the auditor of tomorrow. So moving out of auditors and into the area of the standards, and we're talking under the guise of SQF here, but it's not just the GFSI standards I'm talking about here. I'm talking all sorts of industry standards and retailer standards and whatnot. It looks a bit like this, and if you looked at it from outside, people would probably think we're mad. I think we do recognise that Australia is one of the more complex environments that we work in food safety around the world. I guess one of the things that we need to recognise and acknowledge is that the auditors are being asked to do more and more, and often within the same time frame. So it's not just food safety that they're often being asked to look at. They're being asked to look at behavioural elements, and we've just talked about the food safety culture piece. There's often threads of social responsibility. Jennifer mentioned in her talk about the need for looking at things like OH&S throughout an audit. Sometimes they need to look at animal welfare. I think if we look back when I started in this game, around 15 years ago, it was very much about food safety and food safety alone. Now we're talking about cybersecurity and business continuity. And I'm not saying that these things are not appropriate or necessary, but we have to look at that. Auditors are being asked to do a lot more, well above and beyond what they initially were asked to do. And so we need to make sure auditors are equipped with the skills to be able to assess these elements that they're being asked to address. So yeah, we're talking about a very complex area, and I think it's going to continue to become more and more complex as time goes on. So if we have a look at the generation of assurance, when I talk about assurance, it's a term that BSI uses and other members of the testing, inspection and certification industry use, but assurance is about what we're delivering really. If we look back where we were just really at the turn of the current century that we're in, we're very much still in traditional assurance. First generation, it had been going on for about 50 years, and we were doing things more or less the same way. And it's only in the last maybe 5 years that the industry has looked at itself carefully to say, are we equipped for the future? And of course, as I mentioned right at the beginning of my talk, the pandemic accelerated a lot of our industry into what we're going to need to do. I guess it was forced in some ways rather than forecast and prepared for. So if we look at this pink area there, the second generation, where we're in a really speedy transition there through immersive assurance. And I'm going to talk about this immersive next, but immersive is really the beginning of the next generation of enhanced and continuous and predictive assurance. So this digital assurance environment that we work in, where we start to predict the results and, with combining that with smart content. So we are looking in the very near future of an industry that deals with our issues and challenges quite differently than the ones that we did only 5-10 years ago. So looking through the range of, whilst immersive in the middle there is the first step to continuous audit, we're looking at we have an innovation team in BSI, and I'm sorry, some of this is a bit BSI centric. It's not meant to be marketing for BSI. There's evidently many of the certification bodies out there that are addressing these challenges in the same way, or differently, but effectively so. It's just that I work for BSI and I have access to lots of information through our innovation team. So yeah, robotic process automation, where we're basically getting robots to act as the auditor with repetitive tasks. Smart factories, connected factories, where we can get continuous audits, information flowing through CCP data that's coming through real time every day. And then this allows an auditor to use artificial intelligence down there below immersive audits to be able to understand where to look. And compliance solution hub, where we've actually able to tie it all together and make a very connected world. So immersive in the middle there, immersive is effectively a lot about remote auditing and doing things differently. I'll talk about that in much more detail. So our immersive solutions, going on the back of the previous slide, looking at this from the point of view where people come to us with lots of different challenges, and we need to look at how we go about addressing those challenges. Of course, the big challenge has been the inability to move around the world, even move around the country that we live in here. I live in here in Australia. So creating solutions. Now, BSI started in its immersive journey about 5 years ago, and very much so in about 3 years ago. And so when it came to the beginning of the pandemic, we were able to change gears very quickly and deliver. And I'll show you some results of the immersive audits that we've done, well, the numbers of immersive audits around the world as a result of being so prepared. But the platforms that we've put together allow us to deliver a fairly seamless offering without looking largely different to what we used to do when we were doing it face to face. The solutions that we have in place, level 1, it's broken into 4 levels: level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Level 1 is just like what we're doing here, except there's not much feedback, because at the moment you're on the end of a text message rather than being able to talk to me at the moment. Level 2 is where you start live streaming with some sort of mobile technology, a tablet, a phone, something like that. And it's still a little bit primitive, but it works quite well if you've got good bandwidth and access to areas. Level 3 is where we're doing live streaming, but using some form of smart glass. BSI has its own form of smart glass that's being used in that area, and it also has boosted Wi-Fi or connectivity capability, so it gives a better result than level 2. And level 4, where we're using aerial analytics and drone satellite technology to be able to do much bigger spaces. So in many cases, I'll give a scenario now. This is a typical deployment of an immersive audit for BSI over the last couple of years. Document-based immersive audit or a virtual audit done using level 1, and then facility-based audits where level 1 is used partially, but then level 2 and level 3 can be deployed depending on the scenario. So it could be just using a mobile phone, level 2, or it could be using headsets or some other smart glass technology, and then going back to level 1 for the review or the wrap up of the audit. So that's a typical scenario that we've been using over the last couple of years, and I imagine the same for all the certification bodies that were doing remote audits. Having being able to use the level 3 with the smart glasses certainly gives a much better result to the audit, and there's no doubt about that. When we look at the immersive solutions, there are some significant benefits that have been derived from that. The reduction in carbon footprint for the world, for us, for you, is significant. we've also been able to access expertise that before might have been, requiring people to get on aeroplanes and travel a long way to do that, and may not have been a feasible option. Now we've been able to access that and offer that to our clients and interested parties. And of course, we've been able to protect people's health because, the pandemic presented such a large concern for people. So we were able to protect people's health and well-being through those options. Do also have a look at some of the immersive solutions here where we're using audio and text analytics. So real-time conversion of the conversation into text and being able to capture that, and then being able to leverage that data for the benefit of everyone. So, again, speech translation, artificial intelligence assessments, and content analytics. So this is really quite cutting edge compared to the auditing that we were doing 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. And as well as in our immersive solutions, we've got the visual analytics. So some spatial mapping tools that are built into various tools, and you can see there, the displays are on mobile phones, and that's exactly what is used in most cases for doing this. If not mobile phones, again, headsets or smart glasses, where we can actually do a lot of, not manipulation, but being able to take the data, the visual data, and being able to use it very usefully for the audit outcome. The other thing about immersive is that we're able to engage a lot more people into the audit without them actually imposing on the auditee or on the site being audited. So we can include different observers from different interested parties without them being an impost onto the site. And we've been doing around the world a lot of regulatory based audits, not necessarily in the food sector, but where we're able to use the immersive solutions and be able to tie the regulator in, and at their request, and everyone, it's certainly above board, everyone knows what's going on. So in the case here that we're looking at, it's a security audit. So we look at immersive solutions and the lessons that have been learned. There's certainly a lot of challenges. You've got connectivity challenges, but there's been solutions to that, and good preparation, hardware selection, making sure that you've actually got the right hardware being used. IT restrictions, again, working through prior to the assessment and ensuring that that's all lined up and access is gained. Training on the tech, well, making sure that people have actually got that technology, whatever it is being used, and being able to know how to use it, and of course the training in the software applications that are used as well. As a result, BSI was shortlisted in the Reuters International Responsible Business Awards last year, and became a finalist in that. Not unfortunately a winner, but a finalist. So it was a very noteworthy endeavour for our immersive solutions, and was recognised globally for that. I think if you look at this slide, a lot of it's about preparation, and I think that's what it really boils down to: very solid preparation to make sure immersive audits work. Looking there, that was the 2020 result of immersive audits that BSI did around the world. So some countries, very limited number, but others, really significant numbers of immersive or remote audits conducted. And as an organisation, we're very proud of that penetration and how that worked. Now, it might not be full, it might be blended, as was indicated there on the slide, but some form of immersive auditing. Got a video here. I hope that it works. It just sort of wraps up what I've told you there. It's a little bit marketing bent, so excuse that, but I think it does help contextualize what I've been talking about. So I hope you can see and hear that when I press play.
The events of 2020 are unprecedented. The social distancing imperatives of the COVID-19 pandemic have created a climate of technology adoption that's here to stay. And BSI is proud to be leading the response with our immersive technology solutions delivering the same trusted, proven approaches in groundbreaking new ways, offering flexibility through 4 levels of technology that can be employed individually or blended to meet your circumstances, locations, and needs. Level 1 brings virtual connection via video conferencing, combining speed with capacity for heavy document review, making it ideal for disaster recovery or urgent assessments. Level 2 employs smartphone technology to perform on-site assessments via the BSI Augmented Reality tool, providing live detailed views of sites. Built to cope with demanding field conditions, it offers high-grade stable imagery for full on-site visibility. Level 3 incorporates smart glasses for hands-free voice-activated and immersive experiences that unlock access to high-risk and sensitive locations. Level 4 utilizes drones and LiDAR 3D laser scanning to offer digital models of site interiors and exteriors, capturing non-conformities that can be geotagged and flagged for priority remediation. Immersive technology accelerates response times, drives engagement, shares data, enhances transparency throughout your organization and supply chain, and offers clear oversight while reducing travel, helping BSI's partners to inspire trust in their products and services with their customers. This is just the beginning. We're placed at the forefront of predictive compliance as we integrate technology that will embrace artificial intelligence, machine learning, image recognition, and more. With this technology, BSI continues to pioneer the use of best practice to help build sustainable resilience and shape the compliance industry of the future today.
Thanks for watching that. So the final couple of slides that I had here was talking about combating audit fatigue and redundancy. Now, this is all in the eye of the beholder because, of course, there are stakeholders and interested parties that want to know more and more about the sites that are producing our food. One of the solutions that's not completely unique, because I know that other engagements like this are in play around the world, but BSI actually has set up an organization called SCAN, or is part of an organization, sorry, called SCAN in the US, and it's about CTPAT, so about security audits for sites. And if you have a look at the way that it's put together through the Supplier Compliance Audit Network, SCAN, you've got about 20,000 audits being conducted in 74 countries, and it's done as a collaboration. So you've got a number of different certified auditors or audit bodies, certification bodies on the left, working through a platform, common platform, providing data to SCAN. It goes in there through Origin Trail, which is blockchained, and then comes out as a result with a report with a QR code, and then is sent off to lots of different interested parties on the right-hand side. So, for example, Homeland Security in the US, or US Customs and Border Protection, et cetera, different retailers. So this report that comes out details all the information and captures that. Now, this is a collaborative way of working. It can, well, certainly in this case, has reduced the number of audits being performed, but it's being done through a trusted network of providers. So this is one option, you know, where we look at the future and say, is there some sort of recognition being given? I guess it's in some respects what GFSI intended to do in the beginning, but doesn't seem to have done particularly well. So that brings me through to the end. As I mentioned up front, I will repeat my email address if you need to get in contact with me, particularly if you're interested in PAS 320 and being able to comment on that before it goes through and is finalised and published. As I mentioned, it's the 10th of December is the deadline for that, so please get in contact sooner than later if you wanted to. And now over to ask you if you've got any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. There are one or two questions. Actually, Megan McGee's comment there, but Amanda Evans-Lara, whom you know, is asked, when doing immersive audits, level 2, 3, or 4, how is the integrity of the audit assured? This would be food safety audits, especially when the auditee is controlling the device.
Yeah, that's a great question, Amanda, and hello. I haven't seen you for a long time. Well, for a start, it depends on what level. So when I talked about those different levels, level 2 is harder for the auditor to control. Level 3, where you've got that headset on, the auditor actually can control where the camera goes, where it turns, can certainly speak to the auditor. The auditor, well, so the person wearing the headset on the site can speak to the auditor. The auditor can also talk to the people around, and the auditor can turn the camera. Even if the head of the person is going the wrong way, they can actually turn the camera around. So they start to get a lot more visibility, accessibility to the site. But, you know, Amanda, you know, I know exactly where your question is coming from, because there are ways that people could avoid showing an auditor certain areas of the factory. And I've been on audits, you know, in various parts of the world where we walk past a door and I say, what's in that door? Oh, it doesn't matter. You don't need to know about that. I said, no, we do need to know about that. I want you to open. Oh, it's locked. Find the key. Oh, we don't have the key. Break the lock. You know, go through the process, and then you go in there and you find a finished goods warehouse that didn't exist on the plan and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's not foolproof. I mean, auditing's not foolproof. We all know that. We've all been fooled in the past when we were physically on site, even the best of us. But yeah, there are levels of that can provide a lot more visibility, a lot more access than perhaps we realise.
I think I'll bypass your comment, Claire. Our auditors going to be paid data analyst salary. I mean, why would auditors want to take a drop in salary to add data analyst?
Well, I was going to say, a lot of data analysts get paid a lot less than auditors. So
exactly.
if you'd like to go down, Claire, you can.
Amanda's also asking, offer AI and innovation in the audit space. How do you find auditors clients who have all the skills on top of the standard, the industry, the audit skills and knowledge, as well as the AI and data analysis requirement? I mean, how do you build those skills? Which I think you've covered partly, Todd, but
it's a process, and it's one that we recognise in the project that Bill's involved in, Jennifer's involved in, just to name a couple on this call now, where it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen by next year, but it is a process. And I think we can avoid it and be caught short when it actually comes into play, because it will. It's evident that this is the way that things are going, or we can recognise it and start to either get people who are currently auditing to start to develop some of that extra skill, or some of the people that we know that are of an age or of a mindset that they may not move on. So it's possible that they'll be not necessarily used at the forefront of the future auditing.
Kathy Lee's just retired from auditing.
Kathy taught me food safety auditing. She was my initial trainer. So
you might find a few people retiring from auditors as a result of the challenges and the changes we made. Leanne Chabov is asking, do you think GFSI will accept fully remote audits? And what would it take for GFSI to accept fully remote audits?
I think the challenge that GFSI has is that they have to work on a lowest common denominator model. And when you've got a lot of certification bodies around the world, some of which will not have the capability to do some of the more advanced technology to deliver remote audits, then I think that the GFSI will stick with the lowest common denominator and say that they don't endorse it. We've spoken to GFSI on numerous occasions, have regular meetings with them, but they're of a mindset still where I don't think that, honestly, I think they'll have to. And one of the frustrations that our innovation team has, who are not specifically for the food sector, remember our innovation team deals with the medical device sector, they deal with construction, other parts of industry around the world. Our innovations team said that the food sector is the slowest sector on earth from their perspective of embracing innovation.
Is there a reason for that, Todd? I mean, is it more difficult or more challenging to to introduce remote audits for food safety auditing rather than other, where what happens on the shop floor is obviously fairly critical. It's product and process.
Yeah, I guess I look at other high-risk industries like medical devices, and admittedly, BSI is a significant auditor of the medical device industry.
Sorry, Todd, we've got someone interrupting us. Could everyone else please mute while Todd and I are talking, please? Thank you. Sorry, Todd.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, BSI certifies 23 of the top 25 medical device manufacturers in the world of high-risk medical devices, and of course last year that was came right to the fore because of the pandemic with medical devices, but that was all being done remotely, and a medical device is also a very complex product, as are food products, we know. So I think it can be done. It's a matter of attitude in some cases, and we've seen an enormous amount of resistance from the food industry. We know that the food industry is made up of some very significant players. We know that there's a small number of players make up the majority of the weight behind the decision making in GFSI, and so when there's resistance at that level, I think that we'll see that continue to flow through. So I can't answer exactly why the food industry's not being able to. I know that the environments that we work in can be challenging. I know that Wi-Fi connectivity in the factories can be very challenging,
particularly in regional areas,
and in regional areas. But I've also seen where we've been able to deliver audits on oil rigs in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, where there is almost zero, and because those interested parties want them to happen, they make them happen. So it's sometimes a matter of making it happen and going with the flow rather than resisting the flow.
Okay, Todd, we are going to have to leave it there. Thank you for that. We do have to move on because we have to be in Tokyo in 10 minutes time.
Right.
So please,
Thanks,
thank you for your time, and thank you for your presentation. And I would just mention, a couple of people have mentioned it on the chat. Claire and Amanda have mentioned it in the chat regarding the GFSI proposed auditor requirements. Talking about GFSI, there is still an opportunity to put your thoughts or your comments into GFSI, and Claire has actually put the link up on the chat if anyone wants to pick it up. So thank you, Todd. I'll just go back to my screen if I can do that. I'd like to just finish off by thanking all our speakers this morning. Obviously to Leanne, who is going to join me in Japan, in Tokyo, in 10 minutes time for the town hall meeting up there. For Leanne for being online for that session this morning and going through some of the changes in SQF. For Jennifer and in talking about the retail perspective, and from not just Jennifer but her team that are doing supplier audits on a regular basis and are seeing the outcomes of some of the issues, concerns, events, recalls that are happening within some of our facilities. And as Jennifer indicated before, many good facilities, many first-class facilities, but we still have a lot on the other side of the margin. And also Martin from SEI Global talking about some of the issues that have caused non-conformances and recalls from a certification point of view, and providing some potential solutions for some of those. Claire Winkle talked about food safety culture and gave some very practical aspects and insights into how you can establish, start, maintain a food safety culture initiative in your facility. And just the last speaker today is Todd Redwood, looking at the way forward, how we start to adopt and integrate data analysis, AI into the audit sphere that we have, and also attract people into the industry, auditors into the industry that can adapt to that new methodology moving forward. So yes, thank you for that. Thank you for all for contributing. Thank you for your questions as well. And the interesting thing to me, just to summarize, is the common themes that have gone all the way through. And if we go back to some of Jennifer's comments when Jennifer first started, talking about how the basics are still to be managed. Some of the basics we've been talking about for the last 30 years in terms of poor hygiene, poor plant sanitation, HACCP plans that have got major gaps in them, etc. We've been talking about for a long time, and they're still there. Some of these issues are still there, and yet we can move on from there. And Jennifer touched on it, and obviously it got to Todd's presentation and looking at how we use data, how we use artificial intelligence, how we use new technologies to be able to manage audits, but still look after the basics. And I think that's the challenge moving forward, to adopt some of the new technologies moving forward, but still to look after the basics and to attract people into the industry, both at the site level and at the auditor level, that can adapt to that technology and still cover the basics, because we still have a lot of work to do in that. So if anyone has got any final comments, there is a few on the chat. Just thank you for your presentations. Some people have asked whether the presentations will be available. This session has been recorded. It is, we're taking that recording, we'll edit it so that it's in the individual presentations, and we'll make it available somewhere down the track with the permission of the presenters, of course. But yes, we will make those presentations available. Thank you to Jennifer, Martin, Claire, Todd, and of course Leanne for giving up their time today. And thank you to the rest of you for listening. We are just about to move over to, in 4 minutes time, to the Japanese session. So anyone that doesn't have Japanese as their first, second, or third language, maybe it's time to go and have some lunch. And for those of you who do want to hear, again, we'll be going through a town hall presentation, a shorter Q&A, but it'll still be a Q&A. And also we will be hearing presentations from GFSI Japan, from Aeon, the major retailer in Japan, from Starzen, which is one of our major, longest serving clients and major manufacturer in Japan, and also some of the certification bodies that are operating in Japan. So I don't think there are any further questions, so I will bid you adieu for now. We'll just take a couple of minutes break, and then